Imagine this. A man walks out of prison. He's paid his debt to society. The guards open the gates, and he steps into the sunlight as a free man. He's supposed to start fresh. Get a job, build a normal life. But what if he doesn't? What if, instead, he goes on to kill again? Not once, not twice, but many times. Today we're diving into the terrifying true stories of two men who did exactly that. Men who convinced the system they were safe. Men who walked free. And men who turned into monsters the moment those prison gates closed behind them. If you're ready for a chilling journey into the darkest corners of the criminal justice system, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about second chances for killers. And don't forget to like this video. It really helps us bring you more content like this. Let us begin with a man whose name still sends chills down the spines of people in upstate New York. His name was Arthur Shawcross. Born in 1945, Arthur grew up in Watertown, New York. As a child, he seemed normal enough on the outside. He went to school. He played with other kids. But something was wrong inside Arthur's head. Something dark. When he was a teenager, Arthur started showing signs of violence. He hurt animals. He bullied smaller kids. His mother later said he had a mean streak she couldn't explain. But back then, nobody thought much of it. Boys will be boys, right? Wrong. In 1972, when Arthur was 27 years old, he did something unthinkable. Something so horrible that it's hard to even talk about. He killed a little boy named Jack Blake. Jack was only 8 years old. Then, just a few months later, Arthur killed again. This time it was a little girl named Karen Ann Hill. She was only 10. The police caught him. Arthur confessed to both murders. And in 1973, he was sent to prison for 25 years. But here's where the story takes a turn that still makes people angry today. Arthur didn't serve 25 years. Not even close. In 1987, after serving just 15 years, Arthur Shawcross walked out of prison. 15 years. For killing 2 children. How did this happen? The parole board believed Arthur had changed. They thought he was no longer dangerous. Some doctors said he was safe to return to society. The system gave him a second chance. Arthur moved to Rochester, New York. He got a job. He even got married. To the people around him, he seemed like a regular guy trying to rebuild his life. His neighbors had no idea who he really was. No idea what he had done. But Arthur had a secret. The darkness inside him never went away. It was just waiting. Growing, getting ready to explode, and explode it did. It started in March 1988, less than a year after Arthur's release. A woman named Dorothy Blackburn disappeared. She was 27 years old. A month later, another woman vanished. Then another. And another. All of these women worked the streets of Rochester. They were vulnerable. Alone. Easy targets for a predator like Arthur. The bodies started showing up along the Genesee River. That's why the newspapers started calling the killer the Genesee River Killer. But the police had no idea who was doing this. They had no suspects. No clues. For 2 years, Arthur hunted. He killed at least 11 women. Some people think there might have been more. He would pick them up in his car, take them to quiet places, and murder them. Then he would dump their bodies like garbage. The city of Rochester was terrified. Women were afraid to go out at night. Parents kept their daughters inside. Everyone was asking the same question. Who is doing this? The answer was hiding in plain sight. On January 3, 1990, a police helicopter was flying over the Genesee River. They were looking for evidence. Looking for anything that might help them catch the killer. That's when they saw something strange. A man was standing on a bridge, looking down at something in the frozen river below. The helicopter circled back. The officers watched through binoculars. The man was Arthur Shawcross, and what he was looking at was the body of his latest victim. The police landed and arrested him right there. When they searched his car, they found evidence linking him to multiple murders. Arthur tried to lie at first, but eventually he confessed to killing 11 women. The trial was shocking. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. This man had been released from prison after killing children, and now he had killed at least 11 more people. How could the system let this happen? Arthur's lawyers tried to say he was insane. They brought in doctors who said he had brain damage, that he couldn't control himself, but the jury didn't buy it. In 1991, Arthur Shawcross was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to 250 years in prison. This time there would be no parole, no second chances, no walking free. Arthur died in prison in 2008. He was 63 years old. Why was Arthur initially released? Remember, Arthur Shawcross killed 2 children in the 1970s. 2 innocent kids who never got to grow up. So why did the parole board let him out after only 15 years? The answer has to do with something called a plea bargain. When Arthur was arrested for killing Jack Blake and Karen N. Hill, the prosecutors had a problem. They had evidence, but they weren't 100% sure they could prove Arthur killed both children beyond a reasonable doubt. Murder trials are complicated. Juries need to be absolutely certain. So the prosecutors offered Arthur a deal. If he pleaded guilty to manslaughter instead of murder, he would get a lighter sentence. Manslaughter means causing someone's death without planning it ahead of time. It's still serious, but not as serious as first-degree murder. Arthur took the deal. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter for both children. He was sentenced to 25 years, which seemed like a long time back then. But here's the problem. With good behavior, prisoners can get out early. It's called parole. And Arthur was a model prisoner. He didn't cause trouble. He took classes. He talked to psychologists who evaluated him. Some of those psychologists wrote reports saying Arthur was no longer dangerous. They said he had learned his lesson. They said he was ready to rejoin society. Looking back, we know they were terribly, tragically wrong, but at the time they believed it, and the parole board believed them. In 1987, Arthur walked out of prison. The system gave him a second chance, and he used that chance to kill 11 more people. When Arthur moved to Rochester, New York, something terrible happened. Or rather, something terrible didn't happen. Nobody told the neighbors who Arthur really was. Imagine living next door to someone, being friendly with them, maybe even waving hello every morning, and not knowing that person killed children, not knowing they were dangerous. That's exactly what happened in Rochester. Some people in law enforcement knew Arthur was there. They knew his history. But there were no laws requiring them to tell the community. No sex offender registries back then. No warning signs. Arthur got a job at a factory. He got married to a woman named Rose. She knew about his past, but she believed he had changed. She thought he deserved a fresh start. The people Arthur worked with had no idea. His neighbors had no idea. The women he would eventually kill had no idea. When Arthur started murdering again, the community was shocked. How could this happen? How could a child killer be living among them without anyone knowing? This tragedy actually led to changes in the law. Today, convicted sex offenders and violent criminals have to register with local police. Communities are notified when dangerous people move into their neighborhoods. These laws are sometimes called Megan's Laws or Jessica's Laws, named after children who were killed by released offenders. Arthur's case was one of many that showed why these laws were needed. But for the 11 women Arthur killed, these changes came too late. But Arthur's story isn't the only one. There's another man whose release from prison led to even more horror, and his story is somehow even more shocking. Make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss what comes next. His name was Kenneth McDuff, and before we're done, you'll understand why he is considered one of the most dangerous mistakes the criminal justice system ever made. Kenneth was born in 1946 in Texas. Unlike Arthur, Kenneth came from a loving family. His parents tried their best to raise him right, but Kenneth was different. He was cruel. He was violent, and he seemed to enjoy hurting people. In 1966, when Kenneth was 20 years old, he committed a crime so brutal that it shocked the entire state of Texas. Kenneth and a friend kidnapped 3 teenagers, 2 boys and a girl. They were just kids driving around on a summer night. Kenneth forced them into his car. He shot both boys, killed them right there. Then he took the girl, 16-year-old Edna Sullivan, to a field. What happened next was so horrible that even the hardened police officers who worked the case had nightmares about it. Kenneth tortured and murdered Edna. The details are too disturbing to share here, but the brutality was beyond imagination. The police caught Kenneth quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. In 1968, he was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Kenneth McDuff was going to die for what he'd done. Justice would be served. But then something unexpected happened, something that would lead to tragedy for many more families. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court made a decision that changed everything. They ruled that the way death penalty laws were written in many states was unconstitutional. This meant that hundreds of death row inmates, including Kenneth McDuff, had their death sentences thrown out. Kenneth's sentence was changed to life in prison. But life in prison didn't mean what you might think. Texas prisons in the 1980s were overcrowded, dangerously overcrowded. The state needed to make room for new prisoners. So they started releasing older inmates, even violent ones, to free up space. And in 1989, after serving 23 years, Kenneth McDuff was paroled. The man who had brutally murdered 3 teenagers walked out of prison, a free man. His own mother reportedly said, "God help the world." She knew her son. She knew what he was capable of, but nobody listened. Kenneth moved to Central Texas. He enrolled in a community college trying to blend in. But the darkness inside him never went away. Within months of his release, women started disappearing. The first was Serifia Parker in 1991, then Brenda Thompson, then Valencia Joshua. One by one, women vanished without a trace. Kenneth was hunting again, but this time he was smarter, more careful. He learned from his mistakes. In 1992, a young woman named Colleen Redd disappeared from a car wash in Austin, Texas. Witnesses saw a man grab her and force her into a truck. The description matched Kenneth McDuff. Then Melissa Northrup, a pregnant mother of 2, disappeared from her workplace. Her body was found days later. The police finally connected the dots. Kenneth McDuff was back to his old ways. A massive manhunt began. Kenneth's face was shown on America's Most Wanted, a popular TV show that helped catch criminals. Kenneth ran. He fled across state lines, trying to stay ahead of the police. But on May 4, 1992, he was finally captured at a trash collection facility in Kansas City, Missouri. Kenneth McDuff was brought back to Texas to face trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Witnesses testified. Physical evidence was presented. And Kenneth's past crimes were brought up to show the jury exactly who they were dealing with. In 1993, Kenneth was convicted of murder. And this time he was sentenced to death. Again, but this time the sentence stuck. Kenneth McDuff was executed by lethal injection on November 17, 1998. He was 52 years old. Investigators believe Kenneth killed at least 9 people after his release from prison. Some think the number might be much higher. Many cases remain unsolved. 2 men, 2 releases. At least 20 innocent lives stolen after they walked free from prison. Kenneth McDuff's release was different from Arthur's. Kenneth was on death row. He was supposed to die for his crimes. But a Supreme Court decision saved his life. And then something even stranger happened. Texas let him go. How? In the 1980s, Texas prisons were in crisis. There were too many prisoners and not enough space. Inmates were sleeping on floors. Violence was rising. Something had to be done. The state's solution was to release prisoners early to make room for new ones. Sounds crazy, right? But that's what happened. Kenneth had been in prison for 23 years by 1989. He had taken classes. He had stayed out of trouble inside the prison walls. On paper, he looked like someone who had been rehabilitated. The parole board reviewed his case. They saw a man who had committed horrible crimes decades ago, but they also saw someone who had been a model prisoner for over 20 years. They made a decision that still haunts Texas today. They granted Kenneth parole. If you're as shocked as we are by these stories, hit that subscribe button. We covered true crime cases that need to be remembered, so these mistakes are never repeated. Your subscription helps us continue this important work. After Kenneth was released, there were signs that something was wrong. Small signs at first, then bigger ones. Kenneth enrolled at Texas State Technical College. He was studying to become a mechanic. Sounds normal, right? Like someone trying to turn their life around. But people who knew Kenneth noticed things. He had a temper. He made inappropriate comments about women. He drove around at night for no clear reason. One of his classmates later said Kenneth gave her the creeps. She couldn't explain why. Just a feeling. She tried to avoid him whenever possible. Kenneth also violated his parole several times. Small violations. Missing meetings with his parole officer. Being in places he wasn't supposed to be. Each time he got warnings, but nothing serious happened. Looking back, these were red flags. Signs that Kenneth hadn't really changed. But the parole system was overwhelmed. Officers had too many cases to manage. Small violations got overlooked. And while the system looked the other way, Kenneth was hunting. Could IT happen again? Here's the scary question. Could this happen again? Could another Arthur Shawcross or Kenneth McDuff be released from prison and go on to kill? The honest answer is maybe. The system has improved since the 1980s and 1990s. We have better ways of tracking released offenders now. Risk assessment tools have gotten more sophisticated. Communities are notified when dangerous people move into their neighborhoods. But the system isn't perfect. Every year, thousands of violent offenders are released from prison. Most of them never commit another crime. They really do turn their lives around. They get jobs, reconnect with families, and become productive members of society. But some don't. Some are still dangerous. And predicting which ones will reoffend is incredibly difficult. Psychologists and parole boards do their best. They interview prisoners. They review behavior records. They use scientific tools to assess risk, but nobody can see into the future. Nobody can read minds. Arthur Shawcross fooled the experts. He acted normal in prison. He said the right things. He convinced trained professionals that he was safe. Kenneth McDuff spent 23 years in prison without major incidents. He seemed like he had matured. Like the angry young man who killed 3 teenagers was gone. They were both lying. Both hiding their true nature, waiting for the chance to kill again. The final question, so what do we do? How do we balance second chances with public safety? It's not an easy question. Some people believe everyone deserves a chance at redemption, that people can change, that prison should be about rehabilitation, not just punishment. Other people believe some crimes are so terrible that second chances shouldn't be given. That someone who takes an innocent life has forfeited their right to freedom. Both sides have valid points, and reasonable people can disagree. But everyone can agree on this. Arthur Shawcross and Kenneth McDuff should never have been released. The decisions to let them go were mistakes. Deadly mistakes that cost at least 20 innocent people their lives. We tell these stories to honor the victims, to remember their names, to make sure the world knows what happened to them. Dorothy Blackburn, Patricia Ives, Darlene Trippi, June Stott, Maria Welch, Frances Brown, Kimberly Logan, Elizabeth Gibson, June Cicero, Felicia Stevens, Dorothy Keeler, Melissa Northrup, Colleen Reed, Brenda Thompson, Valencia Joshua, Seraphia Parker, Regina Moore, and the children who died long before, Jack Blake, Karen Ann Hill, Robert Brand, Marcus Dunham, Edna Sullivan. These names deserve to be remembered. These lives mattered. These deaths should never have happened. The system failed them, and the only way to honor their memory is to make sure we learn from these terrible mistakes. to make sure that no other families have to suffer the way theirs did. Arthur Shawcross and Kenneth McDuff are gone, but the lessons they taught us remain, and we must never forget them.